Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. So guys, we have a 2022 ES250 all-wheel drive here in the garage. We're going to take a look at it and we're going to see what is different in this specific model than the regular legendary ES350. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first difference between this and the ES350 is what's under the hood. Let's take a look and I'll explain. This is a 2.5 liter A25A FKS engine. This engine is not a completely different sight in the ES lineup, except when you move in this area. See, this engine is the same engine or similar engine to the one in the hybrid model, the 300H. But we're missing the hybrid system. Here is a good old 12-volt battery here. This is a non-hybrid model. For such a large car to have only this engine could be a concern. And we're going to find out more about that when we take it for a drive and see how is this engine coping with this large car without the help of the hybrid system. But there is a theme here with space. There is a lot of space, especially behind the engine. Because remember, this car was designed to have a V6 that lives here. So the four-cylinder has a big intake manifold, has a lot going on here with the EGR system right here and everything. So it is front large, if that's the word I'm going to use here. But in the back, there's a lot of room. Good to work on, and a lot of room on the side as well. And here it doesn't look as crowded. Let's say a four-cylinder Camry. Some of the highlights of this engine, and by the way folks, this is the same engine you'll find in the Toyota Camry and many models across the Toyota and Lexus lineup. 2.5 liter A25A FKS EGR system that's been updated, D4S, both direct and port injectors at the same time. You have VVTi electronic on the intake side, pretty cool design. It just uses a little electric motor that speeds up and slows down to advance and retard the timing. On the exhaust side, things are normal, just good old school oil control, variable valve timing. Things are very simple here, and I know they look complicated, but for a high-end car or a luxury car, this is where you want simplicity and reliability to be. This is just a good old Toyota engine, does not require premium fuel. Many examples of this engine have exceeded 200,000 miles without an issue. This still has an 8-speed transmission, very similar to that in the V6 model, just changed for the four-cylinder model, but it is the same transmission. Having said all that, let's lift this ES250 up in the air. Let's look underneath it as we explore the second difference, which is the all-wheel drive system. Let's take a look underneath the ES250. Before we get to the all-wheel drive system, because we have that four-cylinder engine here and not the V6, this front cover or the bottom cover underneath the engine is actually different. In the V6, because you have the exhaust coming here from the front bank of the V6, you have an opening in the middle of the cover. But here, because the exhaust comes out of the back, as we'll see in a bit, this is completely covered. There's only one opening right here. That is to cool the electric power steering motor, which is actually right there. Starting with the all-wheel drive system, the first component we have, really hard to see, it is right there. You see the drive shaft right here, and it's kind of buried behind this heat shield because you got the exhaust running and then the heat shield and then the drive shaft that goes to the back. This is an old style all-wheel drive. When we get to the back, I'll explain how this works, but basically connected to the transmission is a transfer case, and from the transfer case you have this drive shaft that goes all the way to the back of the car. Now this transfer case, there's nothing electronic about it. It is always spinning that rear drive shaft, and some people will say this is a waste, but that's actually a very simplistic design. All the transfer cases that had some kind of disconnecting mechanism over time will have issues, that even Toyota included. This does not have any disconnecting mechanism. It's always spinning. It's just a mechanical chunk of metal, if you would, with a bunch of gears that basically takes the force that is going this way out of the transmission and turns it this way, and as well this way, to continue driving the passenger side wheel. Let's go in the back, look at the differential, and you'll see how this all-wheel drive system actually works. This is the heart of the all-wheel drive system in this car. Many people assume, and in most cases, the transfer case is actually what initiates the all-wheel drive system. But in this ancient design, this takes its root all the way back to 2006, believe it or not, and a very, very simple operation. Not the most efficient, not the most technologically advanced to split the power, but the most rugged and very, very reliable. Basically, you have a rear differential right here, starts right here where that red line is, ends at the end. This is just an open differential. You got your two axles, one here, one here. Everything is very simplistic. But here, this front section with the fins is an electromagnetic clutch. This is controlled electronically to make this prop shaft that is always spinning starts driving the rear wheels or not drive the rear wheels. This is such a simple system. And to see it in the ES250, I would have loved to see it with a V6. But seeing this here, this is an extremely reliable system, and it matches the overall reliability and extreme high build quality of the ES250. I like to see the system. I like it because it is simple, it does its job, doesn't have all these fancy schmancy stuff that will break down and bankrupt you down the road. It works. Why change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you can see over here how the drive shaft just kind of tucks in underneath the heat shield as it passes at a point where the exhaust and the drive shaft are on top of each other. So they wanted to put this heat shield to kind of protect it from the heat of the exhaust. Pretty cool design. And this was car, even when you look at the ES350, it actually has that protrusion in the body, thinking of the all-wheel drive system. So it was already designed with this in mind. I just wish they would have made the V6 fit with the all-wheel drive, maybe modify the subframe, make it a little bit lower, but they didn't, and that's the design they went with. Folks, other than these changes, everything else in the ES250 is exactly the same as the ES350. The suspension is the same, even the rear suspension, even with the all-wheel drive. The design overall, slightly modified to accommodate that differential and the coupler, but it is still very similar. The brakes are similar, the way everything is covered underneath it, except here in the front, here's that opening that I was showing you earlier. Everything is exactly the same, which is a good thing. So what is the final verdict on the Lexus ES250 all-wheel drive? Folks, the Lexus ES is one of the original Lexus models and one that doesn't really have a bad generation. Ever since they came out, they have been epic. And there is a few things that they do so well. They're not exciting and exhilarating to drive. They're not sporty and high performance. No, they are very reliable. That's one of their highlights. The second thing is they're very smooth, quiet, and comfortable. And especially in this generation, they are extremely luxurious, very nice, very quiet, and very refined. But the problem is the ES250 all-wheel drive. It takes away some of those key characteristics of any Lexus ES on the quiet, smooth, and comfortable side. The engine is loud from the moment you start it, and the vibration it makes when it starts, and the noise it makes when you accelerate. It's not very Lexus ES-like. It's a little bit on the loud side and feels labored. Don't get me wrong. This engine, the A25A FKS, is a very good engine. It's used in many other models, and it is a very good engine. But in a car of this size and this stature, if you would, it is a little bit out of place. And the one thing is, the Lexus ES350 is a front-wheel drive car. They're not exactly bad in, let's say, a snowy condition where you need all-wheel drive. And the other thing is, when you are driving this Lexus ES250, as we've talked about when we looked underneath the car, this is always in front-wheel drive. When you need extra traction, then the rear-wheel drive engages. So it's really not a true all-wheel drive model. It's kind of like a front-wheel drive with a little push when you need it. So I am having a hard time seeing how this makes sense, especially since it takes away from the experience of the Lexus ES. But if you absolutely need all-wheel drive where you live, you have heavy snow, you really need it, you feel more comfortable having that all-wheel drive, then this is overall, it is still a Lexus ES. It's a nice car. You do have to compromise a little bit on the noise level of the engine, but if you really need it, it's there, it's option, and we're not going to say no to it. I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.